So I owe you an apology, sir.
Oh, you do? This is a rare and special event. What have you got for me?
Well, I meant last week to send you an address to a website that I particularly love and have been forgetting about it for, well, when did we record last week?
Tuesday-ish?
Okay, so I have been forgetting about it for now 7 days, 8 days.
Okay.
It's a Wednesday. Yeah. So there is this excellent fan website that has been online, as far as I could tell, forever, called Dragon's Den.
Uh-huh.
And it is a collection of absolutely everything you might ever want to know about the Dragon Quest Dragon Warrior series.
Oh.
And I absolutely love it because in addition to going through all the series of games, including all the spin-off games and everything, it's right there on the header. You can drop down the menu and see the re-releases, the Heroes series, Builder series, everything they've got. But they have resources for every game, including full scans of these gorgeous manuals that came out with the original NES versions of Dragon Warrior 1, 2, and 3. And they were actually half manual and half strategy guide, and they've got all the maps from the game and hints as to where you should go. And obviously, if you don't know where to go, then they actually will tell you, this is the next place to go, and this is where you find stuff. And it was just packaged with it. But I actually have an obsession with old video game maps. I love them. I own so many strategy guides that, and I don't even look at strategy guides before I play the games, but I just love to own the strategy guides, especially because I love poring over video game maps. And I meant to send that to you because, if I recall correctly, you were becoming suddenly obsessed with the Dragon Quest series.
I like it. Yes, this is in fact the actual truth. Let me see here. I have played through Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, and I have played through the second one. I am now about a third of the way into Dragon Quest 3.
Okay.
Today in the mail arrived Dragon Quest 4 and 6, since I had previously already picked up 5.
Right.
Okay,
and
so
4 and 6 you're going to be playing on the DS, correct?
Correct.
And 5, obviously.
Yes, 4, 5, and 6 are on the DS.
And 1, 2, and 3 you played on the mobile device,
yes,
right?
Yes, the mobile phone, my iPhone. So I went out and bought a brand new shiny 2DS XL with the bigger screen, so I can appreciate it more.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, 4, 5, and 6 are now in my possession. 7, 8, and maybe 9 will be in my possession somewhere around the time I start playing 6. I say maybe 9 because I'm not entirely sure that 9 really is out for the DS English side. It is in Japan, but I don't know if it is for sure. I'm still confirming that. I think it is, but I'm still confirming.
Dragon Quest 9, Sentinels of the Starry Skies. That is out for the DS.
Mm-hmm.
In America? Wait a minute.
I know. If you go to Nintendo's eShop, right? It's the only DS Dragon Quest game that you cannot directly download from the eShop. You actually have to buy a physical copy, which is what's making me wonder.
It is here for sale on Amazon. I have found it.
Yeah, it's the probably the same one I've looked at.
So why what makes you think it's not actually out?
Because I've noticed that Amazon seems to have a lot of Japanese import stuff. It's just a matter of verification. If it's out there, I will grab it.
I can confirm it was released in North America on July 11th of 2010.
Okay. So if this turns out to be in Japanese after I order it, it's going to be your job to translate.
Okay. I'll call Tomato.
And the only other one, like I said last time, Dragon Quest X is MMO Japan only.
Yeah.
And 11, as it turns out, is due to be released on the DS in English first of the year.
Also the PlayStation 4.
And the PlayStation 4, yes. Okay, so that's where we are in terms of acquisitions.
Mm-hmm. I'm very curious about your play experience, especially going back to playing the first and the second one. Which, as I said, I would not start with them. Now, of course, I haven't played them on the mobile, so I don't know what is... I did see the screenshots, because you posted one or two screenshots on Twitter, and it looks very similar to the Game Boy remakes.
They are, in fact, based on the Game Boy Color remakes.
Okay.
Which were in turn based on the Super Nintendo remakes.
Yeah, based on the... Well, actually, the Super Famicom remakes,
yes.
Because that was Japanese,
right.
Yes.
Yeah. But no, it's... Okay.
Which we didn't get those here.
Okay, so here's the thing. Here's the thing I didn't fully, entirely grasp when I started on this little Dragon Quest of my own, if you want, okay? I did not fully grasp that the first Dragon Quest game basically opened up the entire field of RPG console games. Like it was the first real one.
Now, hold on a second.
Okay.
I am now very angry with you. Because that means that you didn't listen to me last time we talked.
No, I did listen.
About this.
I did listen to you. But
more importantly, in our favorite trilogy of Word of the Week episodes, the one about navigation, the one that you absolutely loved, I think that is where we talked about the history of the Dragon Quest series.
Did we talk about the entire history of the Dragon Quest series?
No,
dear.
But what we talked about was that it was created by, now I'm going to forget his name, Yuji Horii.
Uh-huh.
Because he had been a huge fan of computer role-playing games like Wizardry and stuff like that.
Right.
And he wanted to bring that experience to consoles.
Sure.
And so they created a whole simplified menu system in a way that you could play it on a controller. And they basically kicked off the RPG revolution in Japan. And in America, they never got credit for it because the Dragon Quest games weren't ported to the United States before the Final Fantasy games were. So in the United States, everybody thought Final Fantasy invented the console RPG. And the first Final Fantasy game was actually released slightly before Dragon Warrior 3 in Japan. No, yeah.
Can I quote you the relevant line?
Yeah, go ahead.
And that puts it squarely, or triangularly, in the Middle Ages, which is exactly the sort of time period that Dungeons & Dragons and Dragon Quest and the early Final Fantasies and all the other fantasy media are based on.
Okay.
That was the line.
Yeah. Well, it was made by Square.
Yes.
I may be thinking of a different episode though, but I know I did end up going through this. Now I'm gonna have. Wait, when we do our next Word of the Week monthly chat? By the way, if you don't support Word of the Week, our other project on Patreon, you don't know that we do monthly live chats with our fans. So that's the thing. But who is it that's in the live chat who keeps an index of all our episodes?
That was smooth. Leslie.
Leslie?
Yes, Leslie.
Yeah, ask Leslie. Ask Leslie where Dragon Quest came up. I guarantee you will find it.
Okay. What I would like to point out, sir, is there is a difference between knowing something and realizing its implications. Okay? And that's what I'm talking about, is fully realizing the implications that Dragon Quest was really the first console RPG. Offense
withdrawn.
Thank you. And I, because this became sort of obsessive, and what I do when I get obsessed with something is I pour a lot of research into it myself. I knew the whole, the story of what inspired the creation of Dragon Quest and the games that were behind it. And I got to thinking as I'm playing through the first Dragon Quest, the first Dragon Warrior, whatever we're calling it, I got to thinking to myself, this could just as easily have been made by someone who was inspired to do a parody of those games rather than to do them seriously. And it would be the same game either way.
Aha, the Seinfeld is unfunny syndrome.
Now, the thing of it is, Dragon Quest I is objectively a terrible game.
Yes.
All right? You are the only character. You have no direction on what to do or how to do it other than some subtle hints. You have a big world that you can go a lot of places in, but not until you've managed to grind to the appropriate level to survive there. And these are all things I feel like somebody who watched, what was it, Wizardry and things like that, Ultima and whatnot. I feel like these are all things someone who would have seen those games would have pulled out as being like the most annoying parts, and pulled a Burroughs on it. The Burroughs is if they can do that and make money, so can I. So I feel like there's a certain element of that. Here's all the dumb stuff we saw in these other games, and look, they're pulling in money hand over fist. So if that's all it takes, that's all we're going to do, and we can do it, and we can do it that way as well. I'm reasonably certain that is not what they actually did, but I am certain that somebody who had that same idea or that same thought would have been able to do it as a parody.
Would have come up with pretty much the same game.
Yes.
I understand what you're saying. Can I ask a few questions, though, about your experience? First of all, did you play with any sort of guidance at all as to where to go?
I did not start out with any sort of guidance.
Okay.
I made it, I think, about halfway into the game, roughly, and then was just stumped. And so I did at that point go on to GameFAQs and open up a walkthrough. But I have to say that I didn't read the walkthrough in detail. I just read enough to know where to go next, and then played around in there until I got what I needed to do done.
Right. Well, see, now the reason I ask that specific question is because games like this, especially the first Final Fantasy game, Dragon Warrior 1 and 2, to a lesser extent 3, the grind gets better, but they are accused of being grindy. That is where you have to spend a lot of time wandering around fighting the same monsters and gaining levels and until you're powerful enough to go elsewhere. But part of that was actually an intentional choice, and the designers of Dragon Warrior or Dragon Quest talked about this because they wanted you to have the experience of exploring and discovering where to go. They basically wanted you to have the Skyrim experience of, there's stuff out there to find, and you have some very vague descriptions of what you have to do to complete this quest, and you've got to put it together. In doing that, the problem is that the player would spend a lot of time wandering back and forth around the overworld just looking for interesting features, and consequently they would end up in a lot of combats. So ultimately, it's not so much that they inserted the grind, it was that accepting the fact the player would be wandering around so much, they had to kind of tone down the advancement.
Right.
So, and nowadays we look at it because, a lot of people who go back and play these old games, they play them with a walkthrough. And in so doing, even if it's just directions like, okay, then, the next step is you want to go to Garenham or Gallenholm or Cantlin or whatever and in so doing, because you lose that wandering around, you think that it's grindy. And the other thing is that when you go back and play these games a second time, because you want to re-experience them and whatever. Now, because okay, first I have to go here. I have to go to the cave north of Tantagel. What was the name of the starting cast? Is it still Tantagel?
Yep.
Okay, so they're still going by North American naming. Okay. So you go to cave, and then then you got to go to Cole and Gallenholm or Garenham or whatever, and do this and do that. And you need the Charm of Rubus, and then you got to, all of that stuff. Now you know it, so you can blaze through the game much more quickly, and then you discover that, oh crap, now I have to grind. But I don't disagree with you though. They are bad games. I'm surprised you got through 2.
I resorted to the walkthrough only after having spent 2 hours wandering around the overworld without any clue what to do or where to go, and just having fight after fight after fight after fight.
Man, now I feel really bad about not sending you to that website. Because if you click on any of the games in the list, you'll see all the guides and all the just having a map of the overworld is surprisingly handy. And that map of the overworld that they have there was what was included in the documentation in the manuals of the game.
There's a map included with the iOS version, with the phone versions. It is largely useless. you know those paint by number pictures done by like 5-year-olds where things are just blobs of color? That was pretty much the map that was in, and then it's phone sized. half the time I couldn't. I mean, towns and locations of interest are indicated on there. They flash and whatnot, so you notice them. They're not labeled or anything.
Oh wait, so there's actually an in-game map?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
The problem with the map is about half the time is the giant quill that marks your location on the map obscures the place you think you need to go. You cannot see what's there. Yeah, Dragon Warrior, it is, you're totally right. It's very open world. There, they gate by experience level and by item flagging,
Yeah, well,
okay.
Switches. They use switches, where certain events in the story trigger certain things. And actually, if I remember in the first one, there weren't really that many triggers or switches.
They're not. It's actually a relatively small world you're in. It does not take very long to get from one side of it to the other, provided you're not interrupted and you have some general sense of where you're going.
Yeah.
But I played through it, played it all the way, start to finish. There is, like I said on Twitter a couple of days ago, the only guidance you get is, somebody stole the princess, you go find her, there's the door.
She's somewhere in the kingdom.
Yeah. That's it. You are totally on your own from that point forward. That is the only quest. There is no other side questing or anything else going on.
Wait, they also talk about the ball of light, right?
Yeah, they give you some hints about a ball of light, but it doesn't mean anything.
The Dragon Lord comes, he steals the ball of light, and then he broke in and kidnapped the princess.
Right. That's it. You're done.
I will say there's some actually very clever little Easter eggs built into that game, though, regarding because you can beat the game without rescuing the princess.
Yes.
The princess is literally a side quest.
She's optional.
Right. And she's not
the quest you're given is optional.
And the villain does not have her stored in his castle. She is stored in a completely separate cave, guarded by a completely separate dragon. If you do not rescue the princess and you finish the game, the king chides you for not rescuing the princess. If you rescue the princess and then drag her to the Dragon Lord's castle, during his monologue, the Dragon Lord will thank you for saving him the trouble of having to bring the princess from the cave.
Should we have a spoiler warning on this?
I can't even, because as you said, the game starts with two things. There is a Dragon Lord who stole the ball of light, and there's a kidnapped princess. I am not going to spoiler the fact. Well, first of all, this game is
I know.
This game came out in 86.
Yeah.
Okay? This game is 30 years old. Okay? So I'm not apologizing for that. Number two, I would hope that people can figure out a plot point like, you rescue the princess.
Yeah.
I do think, though, you will enjoy Dragon Quest III much more than the previous ones.
Well,
Because it is actually much less cryptic about giving you directions.
let me tell you, Dragon Quest One. Okay, they in order to get it onto the phone and whatnot, while they were doing that, they smoothed things out a little bit, made things a tiny bit easier here and there, and rebalanced a little. So it's not quite as rough as it was when it first came out.
Which they were also basing it on a smooth, less rough version of the game to begin with.
Correct.
So,
correct.
Yeah. You didn't have to have a separate menu option for stairs, correct? You could just step on stairs.
Yeah, you could just walk on stairs. And in fact, a lot of it is down to if you're in a place where you can interact with something, all you have to do is tap the screen to interact with it, rather than opening up the menu and going to search and or whatever.
Search, talk, door, stairs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's very nice. But I will say this, for as grindy as it is, as just random wandering around as it is, I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Good.
It was a lot of fun just to be back in that kind of, and it may be just the nostalgia vibe, but I'm not sure. Just to be back in that kind of wander around RPG thing that you got on consoles in the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, I mean, before getting into Dungeons and Dragons, that was sort of what I thought role-playing games were.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and even then, even after getting into Dungeons and Dragons, my go-to was, in fact, one of my earliest adventures that I ran for my friend Peter, who was for a time my only player, involved a guy named the Dragon Lord, who, not that I was ripping off anything there, but
An homage.
Yeah, exactly. It was an homage. And the only thing I remember about the Dragon Lord is that he had a number of dragon eggs that orbited his head, and each one gave him a different bonus or ability, which I later found out. I thought I was being so damn clever. And my friend, he caught on, and, you know, he started going after those to, like, depower the Dragon Lord when he was fighting them, which was pretty cool. But then I discovered, because I had only limited access to all the Dungeons and Dragons material, that I was actually I had just invented Ioun stones, which I did not know were a thing until after I stole them.
Oh man. So yeah, I really liked the first Dragon Quest. I don't recommend it for everybody. It's not going to please a lot of people, or even make a lot of people go, "Oh, that was interesting." But understanding that console RPGs pretty much all came from Dragon Quest will tell you a lot about why they developed the way they did.
And I will actually stand by my previous recommendation that I do think 3, 4, and 8 do hold up today and are worth playing if you like turn-based RPGs.
Then I played Dragon Quest II.
Yeah.
You have a party now. You have to collect the party as you go around, so you don't have it all
that
at once.
I'm sorry,
cool.
That was really cool. I love
that is cool.
That opening sequence where you're going to get your cousin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whose name is randomized in each playthrough.
Yes. Mine was Kane.
And you go to the castle because the 3 people are the offspring of 3 princes or three kings in the kingdom.
Yes, you're all cousins.
And you go to the castle, and like, oh, darn it, you just missed him.
Yeah.
He headed to your hometown. And then you get back to your hometown, and it's like, gosh darn it, you just missed him. He's here, and then he's here, and then he's here. And then ultimately he's squatting in a dungeon somewhere. Or he isn't. You get to the bottom of the dungeon, he's like, nah, he couldn't, he was waiting for you, and you didn't show up, so he went back home.
Right, yeah. So you go back home, and he's still not there. And then the king's like, oh, well, I don't know where he went. Blah, 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 blah. And his sister says something along the lines of, well, he tends to get distracted rather easily. So anything in between here and there could have distracted him. I mean, that's about, basically what she says. And there's a town. You go back to the town. He's in there at the inn. He's just hanging out at the inn. Like he's been there forever and you haven't been to that inn 6 times.
The sad thing is every time you walk in, he's walking out through the other door and vice versa. You know, I love that sequence though.
The whole Scooby-Doo hallway.
I actually love that opening of, you know, before you go on your quest, go gather adventurers. Mm-hmm. Because it's sort of...
It kind of makes sense.
Well, yeah, it makes sense, but if you look at it in the perspective of the series, it was a great way for a series that had been single player in the first game and then was going to become, well, you know, single party member.
Right.
And then was going to become group based to transition players, to introduce the idea of having party members. Mm-hmm. It was a really great a way to bring the player into that while they brought the character into that, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. It was fun. So my cousins ended up being, like I say, Kane and Elaine. I don't know why I got rhymers. But there you go. That part I enjoyed, and it's a lot more clear about, well, I say a lot more clear. In comparison to the first one, it's a lot more clear about where you're going and what you need to do when you get there.
To a certain point.
To a certain point, yes. This is correct.
Because then,
because then, what happens is you discover that the overworld you've been adventuring in is really everything in the world around the place where the first game happened.
Yep, the game is actually 4 times larger than the original. And you can go back to the original location.
You can go back, and imagine my surprise to drop into the castle, the bad guy's castle from the last game, and discover the bad guy's still there. Except, it wasn't. And that's a story.
Yeah.
But the problem happens when you unlock the boat.
Yes.
Everything after acquisition of the boat is not good.
Well, here you go. You got this far. Have a boat. Now you can go anywhere.
Yes, you can go literally anywhere. Anywhere you can get to the land from the sea, you can go to. Anywhere. Anywhere. Where's that quest location? It's in the water.
Oh.
Which bit? Can you narrow that down for me? Nope, it's in the water.
Well, okay. But you're forgetting my favorite part of that, which was, now that you can go anywhere, we have hidden 5 plot coupons.
Yes.
Somewhere in the world.
Somewhere in the world.
On
anywhere.
Some tile in the overworld, or on a tile in the... or some random unmarked location in some location.
Yep.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Have fun, pal.
My favorite is it the crest of fire that is hidden on a completely nondescript tile on the outside wall of a random church on a random island in the middle of nowhere?
I believe you are correct.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that stuff. You're looking in amongst all the trying to find your way around things and, survive, and you're looking for little tiny sparkly places.
Wait, they sparkle in your version?
Something sparkles. Something sparkles.
Now do it without the sparkles. That's how I did it. Okay, actually, I'll tell you how I did it. Nintendo Power.
Uh-huh.
Even I'm not going to complain that I did that one without help.
The other problem that becomes immediately obvious, even though they tried to fix this in the remakes, the other problem that becomes immediately obvious is the second half of the game is not balanced.
Yeah, they really didn't know how to handle opening up the whole world as well as the first one did. Because they wanted to make it more open-ended and less...
less good? I mean, there are some huge problems.
Yeah. Well, again, they gave you a ship, they opened the whole goddamn world, and they figured you'd be exploring it, so you'll gain all the levels you need.
Sure, here you go, have at it.
Good luck.
I spent 4 hours last night trying to beat the final sub-boss and the boss. Because even though I was at level 34,
Okay.
I did not have enough guts to hang in a fight. I had to go grind 6 more levels.
Mm-hmm.
And the second half of that game, if anything, is even more grindy than the whole of the first Dragon Quest.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that among the other complaints you might have about the earlier Dragon Quest games, the last bosses,
Mm-hmm.
they have a real problem doing that.
Yeah.
They just... The second one was he had... What? It was him, and he had three
lieutenants,
three
basically.
sidekicks,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
you had to do, like, 1, 2, 3, 4 boss rush kind of a thing.
Yeah, right in a row. There, with nowhere to stop in between.
Yeah. And wait a minute, didn't it also turn out that it wasn't him?
Yes,
like the guy you
yes.
were...
I wasn't going to
like-
give that away, but okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. And then he reveals his true form, basically.
Right, basically. I mean, it's not unexpected. Not now, anyway. I mean, that's de rigueur, basically.
Yeah, of course.
Um,
No boss of a video game has just one form.
that's right. It's technically it's not his final form. It's something else entirely. But it's neither here nor there. That's the expectation.
Mechanically speaking.
Yes, mechanically speaking. The point being, as nicely as Dragon Quest II started out, I didn't enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
I did not enjoy it.
I expected you to be less happy about 1, but I'm not surprised with 2.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna say again, number 1, you're going to enjoy 3 if you enjoyed 1, based on what you're saying now. But more importantly, there is an aspect of 3 that you are especially going to appreciate having played 1 and 2.
Yeah. That was spoiled for me.
Son of a... Who? I'm going to find them and kill them.
In the course of my research into 1.
Oh, man.
In the course of my research into 1, it was like the second or third sentence of the first paragraph talking about 1. And keep in mind, I don't look up the games themselves until after I finish playing them, because I'm conscious of that spoiler thing.
Right.
But this was like out of the blue. It blew the whole thing.
How much did it say?
Time is a circle.
Oh, okay.
Does that tell you what it said without me spoiling it for everybody?
Is that all that it said?
No. It was
okay.
pretty detailed.
Damn.
I knew some specifics.
See, I have this. There are certain moments that this is going to sound really pathetic. There are certain moments in my video game life that have stuck with me, that were like big, amazing moments in video games. The ending of Earthbound is one of them. But the moment in Dragon Quest III when you suddenly go into another world and discover the ramifications of that. And it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And then, it was an amazing moment. And I love when you tell people to go play these old games, and they do, and they're enjoying them. I am always living for those moments I know are coming. I want to hear that. Oh, that part was so cool. I can't believe that this is how it worked out. But then also, I was a kid and much more easily impressed. So I actually have Tiny playing Earthbound right now, so that I can re-experience it without having to play it myself.
So I'm into 3. I started 3 this morning. I've gotten as far as resolving the Sleepy Village.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You make some real headway there.
I do. The impressive thing, the thing I really, really like right off the bat, is that whole personality quiz thing.
Which was not in the original.
Oh, it wasn't?
No.
Interesting.
No, actually, the personality system was added for the Game Boy remake, the Game Boy Color remake. In fact, personalities weren't in it. And the personalities actually affect how your stats rise and fall.
Mm-hmm.
So when you gain level, all your stat gains are random. which is also why every so often, like if you have a list of like what level you'll get a certain spell at, like you'll get Blaze or Hurt More or whatever, they're not always entirely accurate because there is a random component determined by your intelligence as to when you actually get spells.
Well, I noticed that because the other part I liked immediately, one of my custom companions in this quest,
Yes.
for some reason about level 8, got like 3 spells all at once.
Yep.
I was like, wow, that's different.
Mm-hmm. So, it actually, people don't know it, but in the first game, and I don't know if this is in the remake, but it was definitely in the original. In the first game, your stats are also randomized, and they are based on your name. What's interesting is that if you enter the Japanese name of the legendary hero, because you are the descendant in the first game of a legendary hero named Erdrick in English or Loto in Japanese. And Loto in the original Dragon Quest was one of the names that gave you the highest possible stats. So if you named yourself after your own descendant, you had the best set of stats you could have for playing that game.
Cool.
And in the English version, if you named yourself Lodo, because Erdrick wouldn't fit in the original, because I think you only had 4 letters in the original. So if you named yourself Erdrick, or if you named yourself Lodo, you had the best stats in the game still, even though your great-great-grandpappy was Erdrick. The later games are, it's actually a little bit fuzzy how many generations removed from Erdrick you are, or Lodo.
I know Dragon Quest II is 100 years after Dragon Quest I.
Right.
But I don't know the other piece of that would tell me the thing.
Yeah, and
without
it's
the
not
spoiler.
something that gets made totally clear.
Right.
But there are certain things that indicate that it's not as long as you would think it was. There's a lot of callbacks to the first Dragon Warrior that are like, oh, so like this is something that's going to happen in a week.
Yeah. No kidding.
But then I just don't think they were sweating it. And by the way, welcome everyone to the Digressions in Dragon Quest podcast.
Yes, exactly. But I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle of 3, more or less the middle of 3. I'm enjoying it so far. I like the personality quiz thing, and I like the custom companions.
Mm-hmm.
So I can name them whatever I want, and then go out and adventure with them. I also like the fact that it has a broad variety of classes you can choose from.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Not all of them seem immediately useful, but I am sure once I finish the game and do my research, I'll see why they're there.
Mm-hmm. There's actually 2 classes, at least there were in the original, that had special and unique uses, but I will not spoil those. I will let you discover that in your research.
Excellent.
Though, did you try bringing with you? Are they still called a goof off, or did they rename them to something like Jester?
It's something like Jester. I don't remember exactly what it's called.
Did you try bringing one along?
No.
They are fun.
I was warned off of them.
By
somebody in game.
They are utterly useless, or seemingly so.
Uh-huh.
They are utterly useless, and they will kind of tank your party. It's literally like taking a Jester along with you. But some of the stuff they do in combat is absolutely hilarious because they don't always follow your orders.
Oh.
So instead they just start telling jokes and pranks and stuff. Yeah, it's funny, but it's like if you feel the game needs to be more difficult, have your hero and 3 jesters.
Well, the thing that really has got me jazzed about those 2 aspects of Dragon Quest III is that this is the first one that has some sort of replayability.
No.
Dragon Quest I is going to happen the same way every single time, pretty much.
So, I gotta tell you, the actual class loadout that you bring with you doesn't have as much of an impact. The game is still going to play out exactly the same way. The difference is basically what abilities you have in combat.
Yeah, I mean, it gives me an opportunity to try different things. There's
Sure.
like at least 2 or 3, two replays or maybe 3 replays in there just to try out the different classes and the different personality mixes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the different equipment and stuff. And actually, I know in the Game Boy remake, they did a lot with the equipment to differentiate the classes a bit better.
Mm-hmm.
because some of the classes had like no equipment, no useful equipment.
My wizard has a bunny tail.
Yeah. Oh. Increases agility, correct?
I think so, yeah. There's a kilt. It's a kilt. You wear a kilt. I don't know. Anyway.
Wait till you get to Dragon Quest VIII, because then you can get a number of accessories to go along with that bunny tail.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Did I get bunny ears? Are those in there?
Yes.
Ears? Excellent. That's all I need to know.
Yes.
Little cocktail dress?
And a bunny, yeah, well, actually a leotard.
Okay.
And fishnets.
Oh.
You...
Okay.
Yep.
Right. So yeah.
Out of curiosity, though, what is your party makeup?
Right now, it's the standard. It's me, a warrior, a wizard, or whatever they're called, and a cleric.
So you, a pilgrim, a wizard, and then did you bring a soldier or a fighter?
A fighter.
Okay. Yeah, I love the fighter. Because the fighter is actually a martial artist.
Yeah.
The game doesn't tell you outright, but if you give the fighter equipment, like weapons, it actually ruins their attack stat. If you keep them barehanded, they start doing massive damage. There is one type of equipment called claws that they can equip.
Huh.
But other than that, if you're putting any equipment on the fighter, you're actually ruining his attack stat.
Because there's also a class that is called martial artist.
Oh, okay. They might have renamed things, because in the original you had a soldier, and he was the armored sword and board fighter type, and then they had a fighter which was a martial artist. It was a monk.
Cool.
So they might have renamed that. So then, okay, because I always play with a martial artist then, and a pilgrim and a wizard.
Yeah. Okay. So 3, probably I will have it finished in the next couple of days, I guess. Just a rough guess. Which means I will then be able to move on to 4, 5, and 6 on the 2DS. Which will be a mighty relief, because let me tell you, playing on a mobile phone with the size of my hands, there's a lot of accidental walking off of ledges and down holes.
Talk to me after you started playing that DS. Because those are not designed for adult hands either.
The important thing to remember is that we record 2 weeks ahead. So when the show comes out, it's already 2 weeks old. You guys are behind. Catch up. Which also means not you, but you, the listener, have been going through a growth process with us. Part of that growth process is me and Scott and I figuring out the best way to do the sound for the show.
Oh, yeah. Well, mostly you figuring out how to do the sound and then yelling at me to conform with that.
It's been tricky. It's not all Scott's fault. Although, if he wants to take the blame, that's fine. But it's tricky because we're doing what's called a double ender. I'm recording my side, he's recording his side, and then I stick them together later. And part of the problem with doing that, if you've never done it before, is matching volume levels. What sounds good to me in my headphones does not always come out sounding good in the final version that goes out on the internet.
And I don't even listen to myself through headphones.
Yeah.
In fact, until we talked about it, I wasn't even really watching my little audio graph thing and realizing that I'm clipping and highly variable in my volume because I go from muttering to talking directly.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
realized
tricky.
I was making... Yeah. I will take the blame for much of the sound.
So hopefully, though, what you've noticed, dear listener, is that each episode is getting better and better and better. And by the time you've heard this, you will have heard the previous one, which should be the best of the batch so far.
Though hopefully this one will be the best of the batch so far. Because
Exactly.
we always want to be improving.
That's right. Always getting better, always improving. That is what we're after. But yes, patience, and thank you for yours up to this point in time. Excellent.
Wait, was that actually feedback?
Yes, that was.
Oh, okay.
That was my response to a number of pieces of feedback we've gotten all over the place about the audio. So there.
I guess everyone knows that that's your purview because no one has said anything to me about it.
Yeah. I'm doing the best I can with what I've got.
God knows it isn't easy with what you've got here. I'm sorry.
The next thing I want to cover is apparently our listeners are ambassadors.
Yeah, okay. I have gotten a few messages to that effect too.
Yeah, they latched onto that right away. And that's fine. If that's what you guys want to be, then ambassadors are what you are. You are Digressions and Dragons ambassadors. So congratulations. Welcome to it.
Yeah, we're not sending you any free games.
Well, it's interesting you should say that. We'll have a discussion later.
Are we sending people free games?
Yeah, we'll have a discussion later. By the time they hear this, it'll all be worked out and we'll know what we're doing.
Okay.
Ambassador Marty, I guess that's what we're going to call him. Ambassador Marty?
I suppose.
Okay. Over on our website for episode 4, where I believe I went on something of a rant at some point.
It's even odds that one of us went on something of a rant in every episode, so I can't tell the episodes apart.
Marty called out the fact that he remembered the first time he'd heard a non-scripted, as he puts it, fiddleback joint.
Fiddleback joint?
Yeah, I don't know. And wondered what sort of moderating influence Scott must be. You, sir, are the moderating influence on me.
I don't believe that that's true.
What are you saying? I'm wild and uncontrollable?
No, I just refuse to believe that I could actually moderate any. I can't even moderate myself.
I think I've mentioned that. Now, show 4 is the one where we talked about our memorable player kills, or PC kills, or whatever. And I think I did mention during that I was about to disabuse everybody of the notion that you were the angry, mean one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm going to assume that was mission accomplished.
Yeah, a lot of people were a little bit distressed by the wolf story.
Did you got the distressed ones? Because I got the ones who thought it was hilarious.
Yeah. I have gotten a few messages from people who were surprised by that story.
Really?
Yeah.
I just get positive stuff.
Well, surprise isn't necessarily negative. I was frankly surprised.
Oh, okay.
Because that one struck me as needlessly cruel.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I even had that reflex. I do think there is a line, apparently.
Yeah. As I explained to Scott after the show during his questioning of my mental health, I've grown as a person since then, and certainly I've grown as a DM since then. That was going on 10 or 12 years ago now that all happened. So, but there was a time you did not want to sit at my table and be a goofball. Anyway, he goes on to say, Ambassador Marty goes on to say, I'm very pleased that your chemistry is much messier than that in the best way. So there you go.
So I'm not a moderating influence. We have messy chemistry.
Apparently we have messy chemistry.
That sounds more accurate. Okay.
That works better for you?
Yeah, that makes me feel better.
Okay, then that's what we'll do. We have messy chemistry. That should go on a t-shirt. Ambassador Bill, regarding episode 2, he says, he had a lot of comments on episode 2, but I pulled this out because this seemed to me particularly interesting and got right to the heart of the matter that had so concerned us at the time. Episode 2, you recall, is where we discussed why classes aren't classes, they're more like archetypes.
Right.
They're not jobs, blah, blah, blah. Well, he went on from there after agreeing with us in substance, and then threw out some other stuff. He says, if humans can cross with elves and orcs, why don't we see half-elf, half-orcs? Why no half-dwarves? And what's up with gnomes? In D&D, they're very tinkery. shorter dwarves, or tall fairy folk, just shorter elves? What are they? And tieflings and dragonborn. Why are dragonborn different from half-dragons? So sort of a general hands in the air complaint.
Huh.
Do you want to address any of that?
Yeah, I can actually answer some of these questions.
Go for it.
With actual answers.
Hammer
I mean,
them.
the gnome thing I'm not touching. I despise the gnome race.
I love them. Gnome paladins for the win.
They are banned from all of my campaigns. And you know what? It's actually for precisely the reason that nobody seems to be able to decide what the hell to do with the gnome thematically. So they keep going back and forth between fairy, hill fairies, or lesser dwarves or whatever. And considering those roles are already filled, I really don't feel the need to have them but shorter with bigger noses.
Is it WoW that suddenly turned gnomes into tinkerers?
I think gnomes always aren't gnomes you know what? I'm not even going to weigh in on this one. I do not know enough about gnomes.
All right.
Of all my various mythologies, I have a blind spot for gnomes because of my hatred.
Sure.
I guess I should look at it. We should do a word of the week on it at some point about gnomes, shouldn't we? Okay. So first of all, if humans can cross with elves and orcs, why are there half elf, half orcs, and why no half dwarves? Actually, the half elf, half orc thing exists in Dungeons and Dragons because of precisely one thing: Tolkien. Okay? And the reason, and there's a reason why humans can cross with elves and humans can cross with orcs. And that comes down to the fact that humans and elves in Tolkien's universe were the only two races created by the major deity Iluvatar. And they're basically cousin races. They're not cousins because Iluvatar liked humans better, which is why he made them mortal. He gave them the gift of mortality. But that's neither here nor there. But that is why humans and elves can interbreed. The reason why orcs can interbreed with humans and elves is because orcs were twisted elves. I want to say they were made by Morgoth.
I think you're right.
Or his servant Sauron, because Sauron was the servant of an even worse.
No, yeah, it was before Sauron.
Evil god.
It was
yeah. So,
Morgoth.
Well, Sauron was around pretty much from the beginning. He was an angel. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so that is why humans, elves, and orcs can interbreed. Okay, and in fact, there are implications in the story at various points. Like Saruman was crossbreeding humans and orcs to get rid of some of orcs' weaknesses.
Right.
And stuff like that. And that's also why there are no half dwarves, and why there are no half gnomes, and why there are no halflings. Quarterlings, I guess.
Right.
So, I mean, that's purely just Tolkien influence. Okay. Tieflings. Tieflings are one of two races that appeared in 2nd edition Planescape. Because they answered the question. Planescape was an edition where the players could explore the outer planes, which were all the different you basically the divine realms, the heaven, hell, Hades, all of them. Eastgard, Mount Olympus, all that stuff was out there. And they were occupied by demons and angels. And, of course, you always have the question of, what happens if a human breeds with a celestial, and because there are demons that live for seduction, like, succubi and incubi and Erinyes, or, all of those things that are going to mate with humans, they suddenly needed this question resolved of what would happen in those cases, because you do have humans living alongside these races, and in the Planescape universe, these races, the demons and celestials and stuff, got much more humanized. They were just people. I mean, they were, obviously they had alignment drives and other things pushing them, but they were also just inhabitants of the world. Demons and devils and angels were no different than elves and dwarves and whatever. So they invented two races, or they were actually two sub-races of a class called the Plane-Touched. Tieflings were what happens if, to a family line, if demons or devils interbreed with humans, and Asimar were what happens if celestials, angels, interbreed with a human family line at some point. And if you have a touch of demon blood or angel blood in the past, you're an Asimar or a tiefling. And in second edition, they were fairly random. Like a tiefling might have, one particular demonish feature, like fangs or red eyes, or they might smell like sulfur, or an Asimar might, have a halo or glow or something like that. Just this one little feature that indicated that they had been touched by the planar blood. So, and obviously over time, those gradually turned, like tieflings. Fourth edition was trying to bring everything fourth edition basically was trying to reset the mythology. It was sort of the new 52 of, the comic book reboot of D&D, where they were trying to come up with one universal origin for the tieflings and the Asimar, though the Asimar became the Deva and appeared later, but that was really the Asimar. But anyway, so that's why now tieflings have this uniform history as humans who were corrupted by the god Asmodeus and transformed into devils for failing to live up to a contract. Dragonborn and half-dragons are also different. Half-dragons, again, they come from the fact that good aligned dragons could shapeshift, and some of those dragons had a particular affinity for human beings for various reasons, and therefore occasionally you would end up with a bouncing baby half-dragon. Dragonborn were created, and I can't really speak to where Dragonborn came from initially. I want to say they were actually adapted from a draconic race from Dragonlance. I think that's where the Dragonborn race first appeared. And they were a completely separate race, and that universe had a completely different mythology, which that universe was also where the current incarnation of halflings sort of came from. Because halflings have gone through a lot of changes through the years too, and they sort of absorbed a lot of the Kender traits. But anyway, so in the fourth edition, where again they were bringing everybody's mythology down, they explain the origin of the Dragonborn. At the beginning of time, the gods were at war with the primordials, who had created the world, because the gods wanted the world to be a stable, non-chaotic place where things could live. So they went to war. It was called the Dawn War. The dragon god Io attacked one of the primordials, and within his death throes, the primordial cut the dragon god completely in half. And because this is mythology, when you cut a god in half, like a transporter accident, it separates him into his good half and his evil half.
Naturally.
So yeah, of course. So you get Bahamut and Tiamat, and that's where the two dragon gods came from. But where Io's blood spilled onto the ground of the natural world, from there sprang the first Dragonborn. And the Dragonborn are a true race of their own. They are not half-breeds like the half-dragons are. Half-breeds are the result of people interbreeding with dragons, because dragons are magical and can do that. And I think the half-dragon thing also had to get added because dragon blood, a sorcerer, someone with dragon blood in their family line, that's an old trope. I think that covers everything.
I think so. I think you have addressed that issue, and it will remain addressed in that fashion.
I bet Ambassador Bill didn't even expect to get serious answers to any of those.
I don't know. He wrote actually a pretty lengthy post about some stuff that.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at his post now.
Yeah, it just this seems like the most interesting conversational bit in the whole thing.
Yeah, except that I ruined the conversation because I'm just, well, here, let me lay it out for you.
Yeah.
Because instead of putting my mind to good use, I have simply chosen to memorize the lore of every edition of Dungeons & Dragons.
What do you mean, could Donald and Daffy actually play the Hungarian Rhapsody? What am I supposed to do with that?
It started, so I sort of accidentally discovered a YouTube. I'm going to come back to that question.
All right.
I sort of like, so there's all this classical music that we all have rattling around in our head, right?
Sure.
And most of it comes from like cartoons and cartoons. Sometimes it gets used in video game soundtracks and all that different stuff, and movie soundtracks and what, right?
Sure.
But the problem is you don't often know what the song actually was. Like, you don't know the name of it. You know it's a classical music piece. And so it was, I happened to be talking, this is a much longer conversation, so I'm just going to jump ahead to the can-can. You know the can-can dance. Okay, so what is that?
It's, what's the can-can or what's the actual music?
Yeah, what's the actual musical piece?
Uh-huh. It is not the can-can. It is...
No. It is Orpheus in Hades. Or Orpheus in the Underworld by Jacques Offenbach.
Alrighty.
Okay? So that's apparently what it is. So I was looking for it, and it's, much easier to do this nowadays on the internet because you could just type these questions directly into, and you get these YouTube videos. And a YouTube video popped up as a recommended video of 10 songs you've heard but don't know the name of. And it was done by this Russian pianist who starts narrating in Russian, which is not particularly helpful to me. But then, he starts playing just the most famous chunks of a piano piece as the name flashes up. And, there's all the standard stuff in there. There's what I like to call the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote theme, which is Flight of the Bumblebee. And then there was, I'm trying to remember all the stuff that was in because there were actually 2 videos because he did a part 2. So there were 20 songs. And one of the ones that he hits on is Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2, which, is one of those things everybody's heard. And actually, of all the classical music pieces that ended up in cartoons, Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2 is probably the most famous because Friz Freleng, who did a bunch of the old Warner Brothers cartoons, he loved it. And the most famous early use of it was Rhapsody in Rivets, where there's actually a scene of a skyscraper being constructed, which is synchronized to the Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2, which is by Liszt, by the way, and there are actually 19 Hungarian Rhapsodies, and it is the second one and the most famous one. And you've heard it, even if you've never watched those old cartoons, because in the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which I assume you're familiar with.
Yes, I am.
There is a scene where Daffy Duck and Donald Duck are on stage in a tune club playing dueling pianos, basically. And they are playing the Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2. Right? Okay. Now, I have a number of issues. I love Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but there are a number of issues that I have with that film. And then I discovered another one. Because as I was now going down and looking at all these videos and just listening to all these classical music pieces and finding out what they actually are. And side note, by the way, do you know the Monty Python song Oliver Cromwell?
Yes.
I love that song, but did you know that the melody is actually a classical music piece?
I couldn't tell you which one, but I kind of knew that just from the way they've presented it.
Yeah, it is actually Heroic Polonaise. That is the name of the piece, and I cannot remember now who did it.
Some guy with a piano.
Yeah, Chopin.
Chopin. Okay.
Fred Chopin. Fred Chopin. That's it. Fred Chopin.
Someday I'll tell you about the phone calls we got at the radio station I volunteered at in college when I couldn't remember how to correctly pronounce Chopin.
So anyway, so now one of the other videos that comes up as a recommendation is a piano tutorial for the Hungarian Rhapsody #2, which I discovered in jumping down this rabbit hole because I, like you, get sort of consumed in research, particularly when there is finding a plot hole in a cartoon movie from 20 years ago.
Right.
In
These
there.
are important issues you have to address.
They are. It's right up there with someone being wrong on the internet.
Yeah.
So it is actually a very, very difficult piano piece to play, because there's a piano version and there's an orchestral version. But the piano piece is actually extremely difficult to play. And as I'm watching this piano tutorial, which basically just shows an image of an electronic keyboard, and the keys are flashing in time with as they're coming down the staff.
Right.
So that you can, basically it's to teach you the fingering for the song. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed something.
You have to have 12 fingers?
No, but you do have to have 10.
Uh-huh. Okay.
There are places where one hand is using all 5 fingers. And here is the problem. Daffy Duck and Donald Duck do not have 5 fingers.
Right.
They are cartoon characters. They have 4. Which means they could not possibly have played that musical piece.
Okay.
I'd say this is what it's like, by the way, being in my head, just so that you know.
Uh-huh.
It is funny that this comes up, though, because this is the second time in a week that I have found myself discussing the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And it's not like I watched it recently. And specifically discussing something that in hindsight just didn't work in the movie. Because, do you remember the introduction of Judge Doom?
Vaguely. It's been a very long time since I watched it.
Okay, so the private investigator, Eddie Valiant, and the police detective are called in to investigate the murder of Marvin Acme, right? Mm-hmm. And they're at the crime scene, and all of a sudden in walks Judge Doom, this terrifying guy. He's Christopher Lloyd, in a complete black jacket and a cane, a black long coat, cane, hat, dark glasses, and he looks evil. You know right there that he is the villain. Spoiler alert, right? Mm-hmm. And he comes in, and they're talking about, now he is a judge, and he was elected to serve as a judge in Toontown. He is an elected official. It is explained that he bought the election, but nonetheless, he is still a judge. He is a legal official, right? And now during this scene, because they have to demonstrate this dip that he had concocted, which was a way to murder a cartoon character, because you can't kill a toon. Right? And he had invented this mixture of turpentine, acetone, and benzene, all various ways to remove paint, that you could dip a cartoon character into to kill them. And at that point, someone drops a crate, and there's all these little squeaking animated cartoon shoes with like faces and whatever running around like kittens. And one of them is rubbing up on Judge Doom's leg, and he gets annoyed. And he picks it up, and now he wants to demonstrate to Eddie and the police chief that he has devised a way to kill a cartoon character. So he picks up this cartoon shoe, which is a living being, and he drops it in basically a vat of acid, just to prove that he knows how to deal with cartoons who break the law. And of course, now that's establishing the dip and the stakes for the movie and whatever. But when you think about that, you have a police officer and a detective dealing with a judge, a legally elected judge, who has elected to kill a living thing in front of them just to prove his commitment to justice. Which would be sort of the equivalent of if a judge walked into the courtroom and said, now before we get these proceedings started, I want you all to know I am extremely serious about justice, and we know how to dole out justice here in this courtroom. And then he takes a kitten and beheads it. And Eddie and
Nobody.
the police chief, they were bothered by this,
Right.
but not to the point of, I don't know,
No outrage.
bringing legal action.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, even if you just accept the fact this cartoon shoe was like a dog or a cat or something. Okay, not a human, not a living sentient cartoon character, because there are apparently different degrees of sentience. The fact is that he literally killed a living thing just to prove he was committed to solving this case. Right. That's screwed up. And this is why I can't watch movies anymore.
That's why they won't even let me in the theaters. There's a fella by the name of Rich Kozlowski.
Okay.
He is a comic artist guy. He has created a graphic novel. He did this a number of years ago, called Three Fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's presented as a documentary of why cartoon characters only have three fingers.
Okay.
But it's totally done, like I say, as a documentary and as if it were set in the real world. The real reason behind the three fingers thing. Which any cartoonist will tell you really is just because it's easier to draw three fingers than it is to draw four.
Right.
Hands look weird otherwise.
Right.
But the premise of this is that cartoon characters were, much like Roger Rabbit, real actual members of everyday day-to-day life, but they were downtrodden and looked upon as second, third, or fourth class citizens, right? And they kept trying to break into movies, you know, get their big break and go into movies. And many of them tried and failed, okay? Until one day, Ricky the Rat, you can guess who he's an analog for, showed up, and he only had three fingers on each hand.
Okay. And
he became a success.
Oh, God, I just realized that I have now exposed myself to like 1,000 comments of, technically the thumb isn't a finger.
Yes, anyway. You have, but that's neither here
nor there. Okay, fine. Okay, go on.
Shows up, he's got three fingers and becomes like an overnight success, which sparks off this sort of back alley surgery thing, where cartoon characters are having their fourth finger removed, perhaps in very unsafe and unsanitary ways, in order to become as successful as Ricky Rat.
Because these cartoon characters, they saw the success of Ricky Rat and felt that it was all down to the fact that he had less fingers.
Yes. So there you go.
Okay.
I'll leave you with that. I won't go too much further into it. It was just a connection that I made when you were talking about them only having three fingers.
No, that's fair. At least something intelligent came out of that. Like, here's a book or at least a graphic novel you can read instead of me just babbling incoherently about a judge beheading a kitten.
But yeah, no, I own it. It's an interesting read. It's not a kid's book by any means. I will tell you that up front. It is not a kid's book. It is not intended for children.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind. But it's interesting.
Really, an underground documentary about back alley surgical procedures to remove parts of your body is not a story for kids?
Yeah, I know. Weird, huh?
Huh.
Weird. But yeah, Three Fingers, Rich Kozlowski. There will be a link in the show notes. We do a lot of... If you don't go to our website and grab the episodes, you miss all the show notes.
Yeah, where you can get links to pretty much everything we discuss. You are very diligent in putting up those links.
Yeah, I try. I think it's helpful for people to be able to sort of, as we talk, to be able to look at what we're talking about and keep up with it. So the website has every episode has tons of notes and links and things for you to check out. So if you ever don't catch something we say, or you
Or don't believe us.
or don't believe us, or you want to look up something we're talking about or whatever, just head over to the website, and it's probably in the show notes there. When you and I were growing up, D&D was not a widely accepted activity, right?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
Okay. There was a lot of what we call the satanic panic going on, which we don't need to dive into. Just suffice it to say that parents were very concerned about their children and the things they were doing, as they always are.
Right.
Okay? Whether that concern makes a whole lot of sense or not, neither here nor there.
And whether it has been overblown in modern days, where it's been overstated just how bad that concern was, and whether it was isolated pockets and stuff, we don't really need to get into that.
Right. I tell you that to tell you this. In the New Yorker, yesterday, the 24th of October, 2017, an article has appeared entitled "The Uncanny Resurrection of Dungeons and Dragons."
Yeah, and I actually saw this one before you even put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Because it is, like all of these pieces, because I'm going to refer to them as all of these pieces, it gets spread around the internet among gamers who like to see, look how good we're doing, because gamers like to pat themselves on the back.
They enjoy the air of legitimacy, finally.
Yeah. As if there has never been one of these air of legitimacy things.
So basically what it amounts to, they open up the story with this psychologist who got tired of being a psychologist, decided to open a game store, decided to make that game store a place where both parents and children could come play games, and decided to organize those games in such a way that they addressed certain aspects of mental development and whatnot for kids. Okay? And while he's doing this, some kid comes up and says, "Oh, I've heard about this D&D thing. I want to play D&D." So, surprise, this guy actually used to be a dungeon master at some point, and he said, "Oh yeah, sure." And then they start playing D&D, and it's a big success, and good things happen, and autistic children are learning to write and becoming involved in the things they're writing, and all kinds of other good stuff happens. And I don't want to minimize any of that, but
of course not.
This is a fairly typical start to one of these stories.
Right.
Somebody discovers that the thing that we all knew all this time, that it's good for social skills and interaction and all that stuff, it's actually good for interaction and social skills and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it is important that we do not minimize that at all. In fact, there are two groups that I have had communication and worked with in the past, who use Dungeons and Dragons for various therapeutic means, generally for troubled kids. The Bodana group out in the Pennsylvania, and damn it, I'm gonna have to make sure that I get this into the show notes. But the two Adams, the Wheelhouse Workshop, in Seattle, Wheelhouse Workshop in Seattle. This is run by, I refer to them as the two Adams, and I actually got to meet them at the Bodana Group's annual convention in Pennsylvania a few years ago, and got to talking with them. So there are groups that do this sort of thing, and they are doing God's work, and they deserve all of the respect. And so as we rip into this article that we're about to, at least I know I am, it is not with any disrespect for the people who have discovered the therapeutic uses of role-playing games and use them.
Yes. I have done it myself at my old job. In a therapeutic environment, I have used it to help kids develop social skills.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Fair enough. Perfectly valid, very worthwhile, and you are to be commended for doing it.
Yes.
Our issue, or, assuming we have issues,
well,
with this article, at least mine, is the fact that this is a a bog standard story that proceeds in exactly the same way as every other story that has been done by any kind of major media outlet.
This is a puff piece.
Mm-hmm.
This is a puff piece about Dungeons and Dragons. And they happen every so often. They happen every couple of years, actually. Okay? And whenever they come out, like, the reaction on social media is always the same when we see one. It's like, see, look, D&D is actually legitimate because this article in The New Yorker, or look, the Wall Street Journal did a thing on D&D, and they keep coming out and they keep happening. And then everybody completely forgets that, yeah, we saw one a year ago or 6 months ago or 2 years ago or whatever, and now it's happening again. And these articles have been coming out since basically the year 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even before then, but I can't say because I didn't have the experience. But from the resurrection of D&D, which, by the way, Dungeons & Dragons is always being resurrected. Every edition of D&D has been referred to as the resurrection of Dungeons & Dragons. That's not new either. Okay, because that's the headline on this. The uncanny resurrection of Dungeons & Dragons. No, it never went anywhere. And in fact, some of the folks at Wizards of the Coast have been very clear about how every edition of D&D has steadily grown the market, including the 4th edition, the one you hate. They all grew the market. So, no, you can't be constantly growing and yet resurrecting, because resurrecting implies you died at some point. Even at its worst, D&D did not die. And that's at the end of 2nd edition, and the death of TSR. Okay, so this is just another fairly standard puff piece that is written mainly by some person who thinks there's a story here and decides to talk about why role-playing games are so great. And it's probably someone who themselves are interested in role-playing games. It's name a Jerome. I'm looking back at what else they have written, and they have a total of 5 articles in the New Yorker, though very sporadically. So only 2 this year, then two in 2015, and then 1 in 2012. So there's no real pattern here. But anyway, it's always these little, like, this is why Dungeons & Dragons is catching on now. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing that gets me, is that there's always this pseudo-intellectual garbage of why Dungeons & Dragons is suddenly speaking to people now. Like, why is it suddenly catching on? Why is it suddenly so much more popular? And this one's conclusion is that gathering together and doing things in a room with your friends in the internet age is now seen as novel and somewhat rebellious. The idea of hanging out with actual human beings. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just read a line about the rise of white supremacy in the U.S. in this article, because that's always got to. Lately, every media outlet has to drop that,
right?
Even though there's absolutely no evidence for that. But
this article hits all the same beats every other article does. Rediscovery, supposedly, application to real world problem, rehash of the 80s and the problems therein. And then the surprising,
it used to be so terrible to be a gamer who had to lock yourself in the bedroom.
And then the surprising revelation that people you actually have seen on the TV and in movies are playing it.
Right?
Oh my God.
Oh my God. People like a thing I like. This is the funniest thing too. Like, everybody's like Vin Diesel and who is it? The Dame Judi Dench. They play Dungeon, or this one mentioned. Oh, Drew Barrymore is in this one. Drew Barrymore and Vin Diesel are the poster people for it. Does anybody like ever get really excited because, oh my God, I don't know. Harrison Ford likes football just like I do.
Mm-hmm.
We're the only. It's like, why do we need all of this validation?
Right.
You know?
Well, especially since it then goes on to do the thing that they all do as well, which is after having rehashed all that and told you all the amazing people that are playing now, it then goes on to diminish the people who are not those people in some way by referring to them offhandedly or bringing up the stereotype and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it does that for a couple of paragraphs.
Yeah, we have to address those stereotypes because, gaming used to be full of those stereotypes, but now it's for everyone, including those stereotypes. And it's like, hey, you know what? I've been in it for 30 some odd years. I don't know. I can't count anymore. I've been in it for 30 some odd years. I am not that stereotype. I never have been. Okay? It's not a revelation that I'm here. You just weren't here to see me. Okay? And the people who are writing these articles are the same people who are probably they're the ones who perpetuate this stereotype.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are constantly reminding people that this is how we think of gamers from the outside. And it's like, no, this is how you tell people to imagine gamers from the outside before insisting, but not everyone is like that. Okay, these pieces, they drive me crazy. Because you know what it is? It's like everybody who gets into D&D, they go through that phase where they have to convince themselves that they and they alone are somehow special for getting into it. Like, oh, it speaks to this generation for these reasons, and it's suddenly resonating culturally for these reasons. And this culture that's getting, the new people who are getting into Dungeons & Dragons, those are the good ones now because of these reasons.
I don't want to just chew this article up and spit it out. I mean, it's nice to have it, and it's nice to feel some sense of validation within the larger culture.
Fair enough.
But because there was a period where that was all not very much the thing. If you got any recognition at all, it was usually negative.
Right.
Okay? So some positive recognition, some positive validation, that's great. But the article doesn't do anything new with it.
Right.
And the article that'll come out in 6 months or a year on in the Washington Post or in USA Today or whatever, it won't do anything new with it either. They're telling the same story over and over again and just kind of changing the names.
Yeah. And that's I don't know why these pieces don't annoy me that much, because this is the sort of, this is what a culture piece is. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's just some random person who fancies themselves a journalist because they get to write a culture column for some outlet, finds a thing they think they can squeeze 2,000 words out of or whatever, and then they squeeze it out and they get a check. Great. What really bothers me is the community response to all of these things, all the, everybody clapping for themselves. Yeah, it's true, look how great we are, and yay, we're validated and stuff. You know what? Honestly, the people who deserve applause are the people who had to put up with all this crap that happened in the 80s and the 70s and the 80s and even into the early 90s, where if you played this thing, you were a pariah. The people who stuck with it. Or the creators who literally, like Gary Gygax, had to go on TV and face down a woman who was convinced that Dungeons & Dragons had murdered her son, had pushed her son to suicide.
Yeah. And a lot of you will hear this as well in articles that also discuss that whole era, that a lot of the supposed problems and the people who lost their lives or whatever were all influenced to do it by D&D. You will discover that in the follow-ups many years later, there were other factors.
Right.
Involved, other much more significant factors involved.
Well, It's. I think no. You know what? I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, let's. I mean,
In fact,
that's
we
about as close
promised
as I want
before
to
we
get to it.
started discussing this that we wouldn't go down that rabbit
Yeah.
hole, and yet here we are.
But the point is, every year or so, like you were saying, one of these articles comes out, and every time there's a new generation that gets into it, everybody acts all surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which it seems to me that if it was a surprise every time that people were into it and whatnot, the game wouldn't be around anyway.
Right.
Okay. But that's okay. So that's the problem with that article. Now, what I'm going to ask you is the tricky part, because of course you can't complain about something without presenting some sort of a solution.
Okay.
You get a call, sir.
Okay.
We'll say it's from the New York Times.
Yeah.
You've somehow impressed them with your writing abilities and your devotion to Dungeons and Dragons. They're willing to pay you a sum of money to write an article for them about the resurgence in Dungeons and Dragons, but you can do it in whatever way you want, using whatever technique and style you want. So, sir, what article do you write, and what does it say?
Okay, so obviously you do want to sell all of the good aspects of the game, right? You do want to sell the fact that it is a social game. It gets people interacting with each other. It is a creative game, all of that stuff. But, like a culture, a piece like this is really best served anecdotally. Okay, which is why they start with these anecdotes that they do. But the difference between me and this person is that I would go into my own experiences. And the first thing I would do is, even though I would start with a headline like, Dungeons and Dragons is back, or the resurrection of Dungeons and Dragons, I would immediately debunk that and said, we frequently, we hear these stories about how Dungeons and Dragons is back, whatever. But what the fans of the game, people like me, realize is that it never went anywhere. It has always been here, for the people who knew how to look for it, or the people who were lucky enough to get into it. And then talk about the benefits of the game. Talk about personally how it has enriched my life. I can honestly say all of my best friends, all of the people I have the best memories of, came out of gaming. Even the friendship that you and I have developed started because of a mutual interest in gaming. That is the only reason we came into contact with each other. My relationship with Tiny is precisely because gaming was that catalyst. My friends who I've brought to the table, we shared that together, and that was something, we got together every week and all of that. And then we can talk about the social aspects. I can start using other anecdotes, and I would use anecdotes from other gamers, which I would certainly call out groups like Bodana and Wheelhouse Workshop. That's fine. But I would make it very clear that, this has always been here. It's growing steadily. And maybe I would even talk about, maybe we need to ask ourselves, as we in the community who love this game and understand all of its benefits, we are confused by the fact that people seem surprised when they learn this and that the D&D is still a thing. And we in the community really should be asking ourselves why. And we should be asking the creators of the game why. Why don't more people know about this? And then maybe leave it like that. Maybe even explore the fact that you almost like an apology piece to all the people who don't know about Dungeons and Dragons, who never had the opportunity. Like, hey, we're sorry because we kind of dropped the ball by not getting you into this sooner. But now here's my opportunity. This is why you should be in it.
See, to me, that's the interesting angle.
Right,
if you're going to write this article, that's the interesting angle, is why don't more people know about it?
Right.
It's not that all of a sudden it's coming back and whatnot, but like you were saying, maybe get into that apology and explain in part why that happened.
Well,
why people are have a rough time bringing others in.
and I mean, this is the thing too, is like when they write it from this tone of like, it sounds like suddenly Dungeons and Dragons is the new craze and everybody's playing Dungeons and Dragons. Well, no, it's still a niche hobby. You know, it's sad to say. I hate saying this, and I have to say it all the time. It is a niche hobby. It is not nearly as big as we would like it to be, and it's not nearly as big as it should be. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And here's another thing. The reason why people are knowing about it now and discovering it is because the people who grew up on it are now including it in shows. Like, they mention The Late Show and The Big Bang Theory and Community, all of which have included Dungeons and Dragons related stuff. Well, you know, the reason that stuff happens is because the people who are now creating these shows are the people who grew up on Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but see, even that though is not like half the people who created video games were inspired by Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
You know,
I think there's a certain sense that what's really happening here is not that a whole new thing is occurring. Like you were saying, it's that the people who played it back in the dark times
mm-hmm.
have finally come to the front and been like, you know what? I'm going to put that in there somewhere.
Well,
that's going to be a part of what I do because it's a part of who I am and it's part of what I enjoy.
But
you know,
well, let me. Here's another question though, because I don't know. I guess I'm not good at this or whatever. There is a generation between the 18 to 25-year-olds now and us, the 40-plus-year-olds, or
right.
nearly 40-plus-year-olds and older. There's a generation between them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I can't even say that I'm a part of the generation of people creating Big Bang Theory and Community and stuff.
No.
That generation is past me now. So, I don't know. What did we do with it?
We didn't do much. I can tell you.
Yeah, I guess not.
Because, well, for one thing, for the majority of our early game playing time, we didn't have an internet.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Okay. Our scope, our reach was our immediate local area, wherever we were allowed to tread by our parents at the time. Okay? Mm-hmm. That's a very small group of people for most of us.
Yeah.
And there was not a lot of opportunity to meet people outside of that immediate scope, or to interact with them, or whatever. Right. I mean, you didn't just pick up a piece of paper and an envelope and a stamp, and then I'm going to write off to Scott and tell him everything I think about D&D today. Stick it in the mail, and off it goes. And then he writes back, and then we put it together and make a book, which then gets huge distribution out into the world, and at least 100 people buy it, and then they read it, and then they know what we thought.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we didn't do that. That wasn't a thing. That wasn't even a viable plan. But now, now that the internet is kind of a given, it's almost at least within the United States, it is almost a compulsory thing that people are involved with. I can record you and me talking about it, and I can put it out there, and then that becomes the voice and gets to the larger community one way or another, and spreads what we're talking about, what we enjoy, and what our enthusiasms are, and brings in people who also enjoy it that maybe only lived at the time 6 blocks away, but we could never get over there to find them.
Right.
Okay. But now they can live anywhere, and provided they can fire up their computer or their phone or whatever and get the show, they can listen to us talk about it and enjoy it. Mm-hmm. That didn't exist back then, so virtually everybody was in isolation. Mm-hmm. It was them and the 4 or 5 people they played with. And that didn't change for about 20 years at a minimum. So that was the generation skip.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair, though. I don't know, because like there was a community. I mean, you had your local game stores, school clubs,
Well, hang
local
on.
conventions.
Hang on. Whoa, time out.
Yeah.
You might have had those.
Okay.
We did not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? There were no school clubs because D&D was bad.
Right. Okay.
Okay? We didn't have a local game store until about 93 around here. And as far as conventions go, didn't know anything about them.
Okay. Well, obviously now at this point, because we are talking anecdotally, we're going to have very different anecdotes and experiences.
Yes, we are.
And there is an age gap between you and I also.
Yeah. And I just want, but I don't want it to be like a big blanket statement that you've had all these things that whole time. Well, because, not everybody did.
Well, no, I certainly agree that it is much easier, that the internet is a game changer in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree. But I also don't agree with the blanket statement that everybody was just gaming in isolation.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, especially because, like, there was, like, even through the magazines and just, like, letters to the editor and stuff, there were issues that got raised in the community. There were hues and cries. Remember when they were talking about revising, like, I remember all the Dragon magazine stuff when Gygax was talking about second edition and then Gygax was ousted and stuff, right? I mean, that stuff doesn't happen if you don't have a community that is communicating with each other somehow.
Right.
You don't have look at right at the end of TSR where they literally, one of the problems that Dungeons & Dragons faced was that they had fractured their customer base with so many different campaigns and settings and rules that everybody was playing a different game, and it was a huge problem for the business. Well, again, that sort of thing doesn't happen if the community base wasn't unified at some point. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
The idea of people playing purely in isolation, I think, is also an overstatement.
Yeah, I grant you that, but by the same token, I think the things are all around much, much more opened up than they ever were when you and I were a kid, no matter what the experience was.
Yeah, again, I don't disagree with that. But now then the question becomes, apart from, well, okay, so rather than getting big and talking about the whole community, okay, let's go back to this article in the New Yorker and articles like it.
Back to the New Yorker.
The overly intellectual Dungeons & Dragons puff piece. Okay. Does this do any good for the community? How many people read this piece and decide to try out Dungeons & Dragons as a result?
Okay. My first answer is going to be a question.
Okay.
Who reads the New Yorker? I don't mean that in terms like, oh, nobody reads the New Yorker. I mean, like, who reads the New Yorker? What kind of person?
That's kind of how I was taking it.
Yes.
But because honestly, who does read the New Yorker?
Well, what audience are they trying to hit? I mean, it's the New Yorker.
Mm-hmm.
It's for upscale, intellectual, kind of culturally, quote unquote, culturally aware people, right?
Yeah, generally younger people.
Yeah.
It's generally hitting the 18 to 35-year-old into liberal, intellectual city dweller.
Okay.
Yeah, urban liberal, intellectual, culturally aware people.
All right. So then, the question is,
that was me being really polite.
Given that audience, given that audience, what is this article's likely effect?
Probably nothing.
Probably nothing.
Probably nothing. Probably it's... Well, like, I wonder how many people have even read all the way through the article who aren't already gamers. Because this is my thing. Okay, there are probably a lot of people now reading this article because gamers are retweeting the article. So they're all coming so that we can all look at, so we can all clap for ourselves. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be so snide about this, and I don't even quite know where this anger is coming from. Well, okay, realistically, there is nothing wrong with this article other than the fact that it is unoriginal and formulaic. Okay? The worst thing you can say about this is it is as insubstantial as a fart in the wind, and will have absolutely no impact on gaming one way or the other, which is not deserving of any sort of anger, right? I mean, it's just like, it's a thing. So
no, but it is deserving of some commentary and criticism,
I suppose,
which is basically what we do.
But okay,
at least at this point.
let's take the other side though. Let's say there is one person who reads the New Yorker and decides to try D&D. Net profit, right? Mm-hmm. For the community. I mean,
yes,
if we're thinking in terms of community, we've gone up by one player. So, at worst, it does no one any harm. At best, anything it does is a profit for the community.
Sure.
So why am I so mad about it?
Does it help if I tell you that on the front page of the New Yorker website, that article is billed as not just for neckbeards?
See, okay, now that starts to annoy me. Because, well, that's the thing, is once again, now that's digging at a stereotype that it's perpetuating the stereotype. That's the thing. By insisting that the stereotype is not, is not the only type of player, it is basically saying, expect to see a lot of neckbeards, and you're going to be different.
Yes.
And see,
you are going to be unique and special in that environment.
Yeah, and you know what? Now I get to be offended. Now I get to be angry. I don't have a neckbeard. I keep myself very clean shaven. Okay. I will define myself as a grognard.
Sure.
But I don't... cultural commentary, this stuff is BS anyway. Yes, there are neckbeards. There are unhygienic people. There are geeks with no social skills in the community. But there are those people in every community.
I was going to say, I was confused. Are you talking about D&D or some sporting event?
Right? But that's every community. Every community, it has a very diverse group of people. And you can stereotype any community by picking out one type of person that you want. Because here's another thing. Like, most gamers who have played D&D have very good vocabularies. Because it's narrative driven. It's, you learn a lot of words by playing D&D, right? That's a fair statement. Okay, so why isn't that the stereotype? Why aren't gamers recognized as being, articulate? Well, as I'm demonstrating here with my inability to string two words together into a point. But you know what I mean? It's like you can pick out any one of these stereotypes. But calling attention to it and saying, yeah, those stereotypes exist, but that's not the only thing, is also validating that stereotype. That's what people don't understand. Because it doesn't say the stereotype isn't true. It doesn't say, oh, that, that's not what gamers are. It says there are other ways to be a gamer apart from that terrible stereotype. Just stay away from those people. So it just keeps the same stereotypes going. And the people who are not interested in gaming to begin with, they read that, and there's in the back of their mind, those stereotypes get reinforced, and it actually hurts the community.
On the whole, I prefer the 538 coverage to the New Yorker coverage.
Right? At least there was something interesting in there. Since, as I mentioned previously, somewhere in the whole Dragon Quest kerfuffle, it got lost where you asked me, what have I been doing with my week?
Yes.
I did want to mention something fun that I got to do, which it's just, Tiny and I went apple picking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we went to this little local farm. Okay, and it's actually a tradition that she started last year. So I guess it's not really a tradition. We just at this point we did it again.
Tradition. Yes. Okay.
We October is her favorite month. Fall is her favorite season. Halloween is her favorite holiday. She gets very excited at this time of year, apparently. And we were both planning interesting activities to drag the other person on. And one of the things that she knew about me is that I absolutely love Honeycrisp apples. Okay. Which are an amazing breed of apple that was actually developed in a laboratory by accident and nearly thrown out. But the thing is, like, this apple has these weird, they're hard to grow because the apples themselves, the plants themselves are sterile. They can't fertilize themselves. So you need another breed of apple near them to fertilize them.
Right.
So that makes, like I said, that, and they also have trouble growing from seeds. So you have to they're really a pain in the ass to grow, but they are, and that's why I said they were going to be discarded as useless until somebody actually tasted one. The cells of the apple are bigger than most apple cells. So, and, like plant cells, they have a hard outer shell on them, unlike animal cells. I'm talking biological cells here. So when you bite into them, you rupture the cells and thus release more of the juices, which gives them a very, very strong, sweet apple flavor. They are great for eating raw. And they're hard to get, and they're expensive. They're getting easier to get now because they've sort of caught on. But so I love them, and I was raving about them. And so she sought out an apple farm outside Chicago that apparently is the only apple farm in the area that grows Honeycrisp apples and allows you, and then allows you to come and pick them, allows the public to come and pick them. And they are so sought after that they actually charge extra for you to be allowed to pick the Honeycrisp apples.
Huh.
So she sought this out just as a gift to me, and we went last year, and we had a really, really wonderful time. So we went back again this year, and, it's like, I had never been apple picking because, New York, Chicago, Long Island, I don't do nature. And it was a really cool experience, because they let you, like, you can reach up, you take an apple right off the tree, and they tell you eat as many apples as you want. So while you're picking apples, they give you a bag to fill up, and you can reach up and pick an apple off the tree and snack on it as you're moving around. And they are so good just eating right off the tree. So while we're doing all of this, there's also all this other stuff going on at this little farm. And I'm going to say it's all seasons orchard. So if you are in the Chicagoland area, it's a really, really, really fun little apple orchard. And they set up their whole barnyard with all sorts of different activities. They have a petting zoo. They have all sorts of animals, including this terrifying giant bovine monstrosity, which apparently is called a Scottish Highlander. And for some reason, they have only one. Um,
It ate all the others.
but this year they had a magic show.
Oh, wow.
Now, I'm a sucker for stage magic. Okay, I don't know why, and I know it's all a trick, and actually, back in my younger days, I went through the magic phase before I discovered I do not have the manual dexterity for magic.
Correct.
So, but like, I know how a lot of the common tricks are done. So, this poor guy, he apparently, because he was giving out his card at the show, and he apparently does like corporate events, right? Mm-hmm. He does corporate events and parties and things. But here at this particular place, he had an audience entirely consisting of like hyperactive children. Okay. Which, now, he was very entertaining. I enjoyed him thoroughly, even though he got his job by buying 101 magic tricks you can do at home from Amazon or something like that. Okay, it was all reliant on just prop gimmicks that he had. He was a good performer. He had a good patter. He was very funny. He did not know how to play for kids, and he did not know how to handle kids. So he's doing this one trick where it's a false guillotine where you put a carrot through the bottom of the guillotine to show that the blade is sharp, and then someone puts their hand through the guillotine, right? Right. And he does this whole big bit with demonstrating that, you put this carrot through the bottom of the guillotine and you slam it down and then it cuts the carrot. But now you put it through the middle of the guillotine and it doesn't cut the carrot. And he keeps making like he's screwing up the trick because the carrot is getting cut. And he's like, oh, wait, let me check this out. And then he goes, and he's like, okay, we'll try it again. So after he completely plays up this screwing up. So now he's got this little girl. And he's like, you know what? I think I figured it out. Don't even worry about the carrot. Just put your arm through. And he's like, which hand do you write with? Okay, use the other one. The little girl was so terrified. He overdid it to this poor, 5-year-old girl. Oh. To the point where she literally thought she was going to have her arm cut off. And it's like, hey, you went a little bit too far there with the kid, So it was so funny to watch because he was otherwise a good performer for a guy who does magic tricks at corporate events in Illinois. if that's the stick by which we're measuring, he was good at it.
Okay.
But he was just dying with these kids around him. But anyway, and that's it. And then we came home and we turned a bunch of apples into delicious apple crisp.
Ooh.
And we also carved pumpkins. But that's
nice.
Neither here nor there.
There could be more explanation. But we're out of time.